Hi there, my name is Julie Fei-Fan Balzer, and today I'm going to show you how easy it is to cut some stamps with your ScanNCut to make some adorable stamp notebooks. So the first step for our project is we're going to cut some stamps. Now I'm using the stamp material and it comes bigger than this, but I've cut it down to this size because we really just need a little piece for it. Now it's sandwiched between two pieces of plastic, and the key is you only want to remove one piece of the plastic. So I'm simply going to peel that off, and that is going to be garbage, okay? Now when I put this down on the mat, and this is really important, you want the single sheet of plastic that's left to be on the upside, to be on the top side, okay? So when I put this down on my mat, I'm just going to remove the dust cover. I'm simply going to place this down so that that plastic sheet is facing up, okay? Smooth it down onto my mat. Then I'm going to go ahead and open up my dust cover, and I'm going to load in the mat. Now we're going to use one of the built-in designs. So I'm here at the home screen, and I'm going to choose Pattern, and I'm going to go into the built-in designs, and now I think this is kind of a cool idea. I'm going to choose the animal patterns here, and I'm going to navigate to the second page. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this butterfly. Now I want to make it as small as I possibly can, and there'll be a little beep sound when the machine says we can't make it any smaller. And once I hear that, I'm just going to say okay. And you'll see that the butterfly comes in 3 parts. And what I'm going to do, I want all 3 parts, so I'm going to choose the first part, A, and I'm going to say okay, and set, and then A appears, and I'm going to say add, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the pink bit there, and I'm going to say okay, set, there it is. I'm going to say add, go ahead and grab part C, say okay, set, and boom, there it is, all 3 parts. I need to scan in the stamp material so that I can place each of those pieces, because believe it or not, we're going to be able to cut 3 stamps out of that tiny little piece of silicone. It's kind of exciting. So once it shows up on the screen, pretty cool that you can see that clear material right on that white mat, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the pieces of my butterfly and I'm going to drag them on. Now if you need, you can go ahead and you can zoom in up to 400% so that I can really see exactly where my pieces are, so that I can completely and totally lay this out just how I want it to be. And then once everything is laid out perfectly, I can say okay, 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 and cut. But before we cut, there are a couple things to notice. The first is that I'm using the purple deep cut blade, okay, and that's set to about a 6.5. The next thing is that in the settings, I have it set so that my cut speed is a 1 and my cut pressure is a 5. Now these are the settings that have worked for me because I've done a test cut, but of course you should do a test cut and see what works for your machine. Okay, so once I'm set there, I'm just going to hit that big green button and we're ready to cut. So I'm going to go ahead and unload the mat and close the dust cover, and now I'm ready to peel my pieces off. Okay, so I'm just have all my little pieces. Now they do have this little piece of plastic on them, and you need to peel that off. So if any of them are still stuck in, you just simply gently pull them out, and you get the little bits and pieces on out of there of each layer. And then you should have 3 stamps in absolutely no time at all. So you can see I have my 3 pieces all pulled out and cut out, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small stamp block and I'm going to go ahead and start with the first part, or the outline part. I'm also going to start with my lightest color of ink. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply that ink in. If it gets all over the block, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Now, you can use more than one color of ink if you want, but I'm just going to start with this yellow. And I have a little notebook here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that right down onto there, and you can see it's very faint, which is totally fine. And I'm just going to repeat this process of stamping that over and over and over again across the notebook. And again, like I said, if you want, you can certainly mix your colors a little bit so that you can get some sort of fun looks. And you want to stamp a couple of the stamps off the edge so that you actually get that sense that the butterflies are sort of flying all over. If you want, you can certainly do it so that they're in different directions, and some are angled and some are not, and some are close together and some are far apart. This is your chance to just do whatever artistically speaks to you. But just have fun with it, and the reason we're starting with a lighter color is because we're going to layer. So let me go ahead and finish layering or stamping this initial layer, and then we'll get on to the next part. So I'm simply going to take a baby wipe and I'm just going to wipe off this stamp and clean it off of ink. I'm going to pull it off the block and then I can go ahead and just clean the block. And once that's done, I want to make sure that it's dry, so I'm just rubbing it against my piece of cardboard to make sure that it's dry. And then I'm going to put the next layer on. Now I'm using two darker colors now that we're getting there. So I'm going to use a little bit of orange, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab some of this nice red, and I'm just layering and mushing them together, and I'm not worried too much about keeping anything separate. And then because it's a clear stamp, what I'm able to do is see through the block and through the stamp, and I can simply line it up. And I don't like it when it's totally exact. I like it when it's generally the same. If you like it when it's totally exact, then go ahead and take your time to do it so it completely lines up. But I like that kind of, they call it offset printing, when it's slightly off, and I think that helps give it a sort of handmade authenticity, which I really appreciate. So I'm just going to keep layering these up, a little slightly offset, but generally in the same place, and I think this is going to be a really cool notebook when that's done. Looks great, and now we are ready for our next layer, and that is, you can see this tiny little center bit, so I'm using an even tinier stamp block for that, and I'm going to go ahead and just ink that up. Okay, and again, it doesn't matter if the ink is all smushy all over, and then again I can see through it, so I can place that little center stem, I guess it's not a stem, it's the body, right where it needs to go. And I'm using a nice dark brown here, but you could use any color and you could certainly mix it up. Now you'll also notice that I made all of my butterflies the same color. I think it would be super fun if you made them a whole wide variety of colors of all different kinds. You could do all sorts of fun stuff. It's really up to you. So the nice thing is you can take this stamp set now and even this idea, and you could decorate, 20 notebooks and they could all look different even though you were using the exact same stamp set. You could of course also cut some stamps in a different size. Isn't that a cool idea? So that you could have some butterflies that were bigger, et cetera, and then they would just be floating around a whole sea of butterflies. Really cool and really easy. So my notebook is all stamped and it looks super cute, but it's not totally done yet. I've got one more step to take it from cool to super fabulous, and that is we're going to cut a word out of this vinyl. So the first thing we need to start is we're going to need some paper and a black marker, and I'm going to write out in my normal handwriting of note. And after I've written it out in my kind of messy whatever, then I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to zhuzh it. Like if I want to make the T a little bit longer, if I want to make certain parts a little bit thicker. I think it always looks a little bit better if you can make things slightly thicker. And you don't have to make it uniformly thicker. I think that's one of the things that people like about calligraphy and stuff, is that it's slightly thinner in places and slightly thicker in other places. And I do like to round the edges, but that's a personal style thing. You could certainly leave them more sort of square. But you can see that fatter note, I think, looks better than this thinner of. So I'm just going to go ahead and fatten part of that up. And just make sure that I'm really making it as filled in as possible, because any gaps are going to get read by the scanner, and I really don't want those gaps to show up. I really want it to be a nice, smooth finish here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I can even continue part of the F down, and that looks fantastic to me. So once I have finished it and I'm happy with it, the next step is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in my scanning mat, and I'm simply going to place my writing into the scanning mat, and we're ready to scan it into the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and open the dust cover, and I'm going to load my scanning mat into the machine. And then from the home screen, I'm going to choose Scan to Cut Data. I'm in grayscale, which is fine, and I'm going to press Start, and it's going to scan that right in to create the cut file. So I'm going to choose the second option, which is the inline and outline, and I'm going to use those red arrows to drag in so that I'm just around my text of note. And it looks good to me, so I'm just going to hit Save, and I'm going to go ahead and save it into the machine. It's going to tell me that it's saved, so that I'm ready to say OK, and I can just hit the home button and say OK again. So from the pattern, I just navigate to save data into the machine. I know it's the last thing that I saved into the machine right there. Now if you go ahead and look at the red box, you'll see that red box jump, 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 because this is lots of little cut files. And what I want to do is I want to select all of those cut files, and I want to unify them into one shape. So once that's unified, I'm actually going to save it into the machine. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite. The answer is yes, because I don't want that file with a million little cuts. I just want this one file right there. So now it's one big file. And I'm going to go ahead and unload my scanning mat. And now I'm going to take my regular mat and remove the dust cover. And I'm going to take my little piece of vinyl, stick it down onto the mat. And then I'm simply going to load my mat right into the machine and press the load button. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the scan button because I need to make sure that my of note is sized correctly to fit on my vinyl and to fit on my notebook. So once it comes up, it's black vinyl. So I'm going to go ahead and lighten it up in the settings so that I can go ahead and I can see this on top of it. And now I'm just simply going to adjust the size so that it's the right size, and I can zoom in so that I can see if it fits, and it does. I could even make it just a skosh bigger, which I can go ahead and do. And then again, check it out. How does it look? Looks good, still the right size, and I think it's perfect. It's right in the middle of my vinyl. If I want to really conserve vinyl, I can bring it on up so I could use this piece again and say okay, 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 cut. Now before we actually cut, a couple things to note. I did a test cut, and I saw that for me a cut speed of 1 and a cut pressure of 2 worked. I'm also using my blue standard blade, which I've set to a 1.5, but you should check and see whatever works for your machine. And when I'm ready, I can just go ahead and press that start button. Go ahead and unload the mat, and with all vinyl projects I have gone ahead and I've set those settings so that this comes off as one piece, because what we need to do next is we need to go ahead and weed it. So weeding simply means removing the parts of the vinyl that you don't want. So you can see I'm pulling away the outside first, and that just really helps me to see what's going on. And then I'm going to bend the backing paper, and that'll help me pop out some of these little tiny insides. You could also use tweezers to help you. That's always a useful tool. Also, if you had any, like a little tiny pointy stick or something of some kind, even like a bamboo skewer used for cooking would be a helpful tool, or if you have fingernails, that'll work too. You're just trying to get all those little parts out until this looks exactly as it should. And you can see there's my handwriting reduced into a little tiny cute size. Now I am going to use this transfer sheet, and it's just adhesive on one side and it's got a grid on the other, and this is reusable. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to push it down, and if I want I can use the grid to line that up so that my of note is relatively straight, and then I'm going to use my thumb to burnish this on. Okay, and now if I peel slowly, the vinyl should be stuck to that transfer sheet instead of, yeah, to the backing. So now I can take my notebook and I can look and I can see where I want this of note to go, and I can perfectly place it. It's decision making is the hardest part of this. I think I'm going to put it right in the middle, right there. And once I like the way that it looks, I'm going to commit by pushing it down and burnishing with my thumb over the top, and now that transfer sheet is going to just come right off. Boom, boom, boom. I can place that down on the plastic to use again, and look at that fabulous notebook. I love my finished notebook, and I hope that you do too. I hope it's a project that you'll give a try. For more tips, tricks, and tutorials, please visit my blog at balzerdesigns.typepad.com, and of course check out the ScanNCut website at ScanNCut.com.